This week on To the Contrary.
Up first, gender non-conforming roles in the Democratic leadership. Then, an historically diverse Olympics gets underway. Behind the headlines, is Sports Illustrated going woke with its infamous Swimsuit Edition?
Hello, I'm Bonnie Urbay. Welcome to the Contrary, a weekly discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. Up first, Nancy Pelosi and President Biden gender swapping on roles. The U.S. Senate quashed President Biden's initial bid for across-the-aisle cooperation as Republicans blocked debate on a highly touted bipartisan infrastructure bill, although discussions do go on. But as the president tries to get both sides to work together.
This reminds me of the days we used to get an awful lot done up in the United States Congress. We actually worked with one another. We had bipartisan deals. Bipartisan deals means compromise.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is talking very tough to Republican House leaders and is less concerned about bipartisanship.
It is my responsibility as Speaker of the House to make sure we get to the truth on this, and we will not let their antics stand in the way of that.
The bipartisan House investigation of the January 6th insurrection fell apart as Pelosi took a controversial and tough stance. She blocked two extremist Republican members from sitting on the panel. Both Jim Jordan and Jim Banks supported former President Trump in claiming Biden actually lost the presidential election, which is factually inaccurate. Is this a gender role reversal with Pelosi, a woman, playing hardball while the president tries to soft pedal things?
With us today are DC Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton, Rina Shah, Republican strategist, Erin Matson, co-founder of Repro Action, and Ann Stone, conservative commentator.
Is Nancy Pelosi playing hardball and Biden, soft pedaling everything? And is that gender role swapping in the Democratic leadership?
Well, it is gender role reversal, but it is typical of Nancy Pelosi. Don't mess with Nancy because she will mess back. So she's playing the role she has typically played as Speaker of the House and been successful at playing.
Is this with the president playing the nice guy and Nancy Pelosi really hitting back hard at Republicans on not just this situation, everything really? She says a lot of things that a lot of Democrats won't say, like this was a lie, or this was factually inaccurate, or this was in violation of the Constitution. Is this good for young girls to see as a role model?
I'd absolutely say so. I mean, if there's something to be said, Nancy Pelosi is a titan of the ages in terms of exercising political power. And I think what this also illustrates is that gender roles are really outdated. And the fact is that women can be strong and harsh and brash, and men can be cuddly and sweet and cajole. And the fact is that we shouldn't be indoctrinating people and saying you have to be a certain way because of the way you were born.
Your thoughts, Anne?
Well, I've always considered Nancy Pelosi sort of Tip O'Neill in a skirt. She is fulfilling the role she needs to as Speaker by being tough. If we want to get into the specifics of what she's being tough about, that's a whole other question. But certainly showing that she stands up for herself is not a bad thing for girls.
And I wonder, Rina, what impact, if any, this gender role swapping or reversal, whatever you want to call it, might have on the very crucial 2022 elections. Because, of course, the party in power in the White House tends to lose lose seats in Congress the first time around in the midterms. And if Joe Biden is seen as too nice a guy, will the Democratic Party have any chance of winning the white male votes who are, the guys out there at the insurrection? I'm talking about Republican Trump supporter votes.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, but I don't know that it has anything to do with the dynamic between Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden. I think it's the need for many Americans out there to see a strong man in power when we talk about the executive office, the White House. And so has that gone away? That's what I'm really interested in seeing in the midterms more than anything is how do people in my generation, for example, older millennials, what I would be considered as, those born after 1981, how do we see power? And it's not just that dynamic of power between Pelosi and Biden, like I mentioned, it's the power in the Democratic Party altogether. Who is coming up in the ranks? Who is looking like they're going to succeed? Some of the older folks that have been the guards for so long, whether we're talking on the Senate side, we're talking about Chuck Schumer, for example. We need to see who's coming to power in the next generation. And are those going to be younger women like Stephanie Murphy, for example, who Nancy Pelosi told the story of, saying she was an immigrant and came over at such a young age and has such a love for this country. So these stories of younger women in the party, I think will have a greater impact on the minds of voters across the country, whether we're talking about the West, the Midwest, the Southern states, or the Mid-Atlantic. I think that's going to have a greater impact.
All right, Congresswoman Norton, what do you think about the impact on the midterms? Is President Biden going to come across as too soft to any independent or Republican men who might have otherwise voted Democratic?
Well, Bonnie, I'm going to make a prediction here. And that prediction is that Joe Biden is going to, indeed, the Democrats are going to defy the usual midterms. This is a popular president, particularly if the infrastructure bill gets through and it looks like it's on its way. Look what he's done for the pandemic. This would defy the odds. But I believe that although we control the House, the Senate, barely, both of them, and the presidency, that the country is in a mood for a president and a mid-election that says we are all together. So I predict here, on to the contrary, Democrats are going to defy the odds.
Okay, and we will hold you to that as the midterms come along.
Respectfully, Congresswoman, I think there's going to be a red tsunami. It's going to be stronger than 2010. I think the Democrats are going to be wiped out. People at the grassroots are very angry about a lot of issues. They're angry about crime. They're angry about the border. They're angry about education. And they're holding, and that's the tip of the iceberg, and they're holding Democrats responsible for it. So I think there's going to be a real blowback. And the polling we're seeing that already.
All right, but she made a great point about a popular president. Historic high, 60% approval rating.
Doesn't matter. And some polling has him much lower. He's popular as a person, but on issues, he's underwater with all the issues except for the vaccine. He's underwater on crime. He's underwater on the border. He's underwater on whether or not he's uniting us, which people are seeing none of that. So I really think there's going to be a major blowback.
All right, from politics to the Olympics.
This year's Olympics in Tokyo will be the most inclusive in history, according to the news outlet Outsports. There will be at least 121 out lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and non-binary athletes competing. Outsports counted 56 LGBTQ athletes at the Rio Games in 2016 and 23 athletes in the 2012 Summer Games in London. This year's list includes athletes from 25 countries competing in 26 sports. 30 of the athletes are representing the United States, making it the country with the largest contingent of LGBTQ Olympians.
So Erin Matson, is this progress or not?
Well, absolutely. Every time kids see people in the public eye out and proud as LGBTQ, that makes it safer for other people to come forward. So I think it's great. I'm still concerned about the Olympics, though, Bonnie. I'm looking at athletes like Sha'Carri Richardson, one of our wonderful runners here in the United States, who's been disqualified.
Our top runner in one of the contests.
Yeah, horrific, and disqualified for legally using marijuana in the United States. That's ridiculous. So there's a long way to go with the Olympics. I don't want to act like it's all wonderful. And then the other piece that I just like to bring up is the excitement in seeing out transgender athletes playing in the Olympics. And particularly, I want to tie that back to the United States, where we have a number of really cruel lawmakers at the state level who are trying to bully transgender youth out of participating in sports and participating in school, period. I hope they'll watch the Olympics and take a page and start being nice.
And your thoughts, Anne?
Well, I don't know if it's a matter of being nice or not, but I will say this. I don't care what somebody's sexual orientation is when it comes to the Olympics. I'm happy to see more participation. As a conservative, I believe what people do in their bedroom is their business, not mine. So I'm happy to see more of it. And whoever's going to represent the country best, I say that's great.
Your thoughts, Rina?
Well, I certainly have taken a lot of issue with the Olympics this time around. Of course, it's a morale boosting event. But if there ever were a time to cancel the Olympics, this would have been the year, especially with all the data we got about the Delta variant around the world. We know the implications and we see it playing out in real time. Athletes are getting COVID-19 and they're having to stay back or be completely out. And it's just it's a horrific thing to see for me, because I just think this could have been prevented. Sure, it's exciting. These people are at the top of their fields. It's terrible for them to be denied an opportunity to put those on display in the biggest arena in the world, the Olympics. But I think this is a perfect example of how a select few elite put profits over people's lives. I think public health mattered here, and I see that Tokyo was not ready, was not responsible, and still is not. I also think it's not right for the First Lady, Joe Biden, to be traveling over there, given the cases, the rise in cases we're seeing. There's nothing that can be done to make this Olympics any better, and I think it's been abhorrent in every way, also in terms of these antiquated rules. This is just laughable now. They're talking about the length of women's shorts. And then on top of it, you've got Paralympic athletes being denied their guides. It's a complete mess. It should have been canceled.
Well, I would hit back at you. The Norwegian, are you talking about the length of shorts because of the Norwegian?
The Norwegian women, yes.
Beach handball event, which I'm thinking, why is beach handball even in the Olympics? And they're making more and more sports, Olympic level sports, which are, I read an article this week. I haven't been able to factually, to fact check it, but they're going to allow mule jumping in the Olympics, according to the Chronicle of the Horse. So, I mean, when do we stop adding these sports
I think
to the
sports
Olympics?
are fun, and any sport is fine. It's these problems with the rules is what we're talking about. Marijuana is a performance-enhancing drug. That's ridiculous. The IOC has not kept up. And when we talk about the length of the shorts of those women, there was another athlete that was told her shorts were too short, whereas the Norwegian team was told they were not short enough. So it's just
right. The Norwegian team, the kerfuffle, just so our viewers know, over the Norwegian, as I said, beach handball team, they're supposed to wear bikini bottoms, and the men, of course, are allowed to wear shorts. And so they rebelled against it, and they were fined by their country organization. But go ahead, Rina.
Yeah, I think this is what we're seeing playing out here, is that there are people who are not being particularly responsible when it comes to forming rules that keep up with the times. And I think you're going to see a whole crop of folks arise, especially with what Erin said about Sha'Carri Richardson just being so talented. It seems almost unfair to enter into these spaces anymore when the rules have not kept up with the times. And that's my biggest problem with seeing these Olympics. But moreover, it's the public health that is being greatly put at risk here. And it's just so irresponsible to see the IOC behave this way.
And let's get back to the debate, which is going on here in the United States about who is a woman and who is a man, and allowing transgender men and transgender women to compete in sports who have great advantages because of the hormones. Men, for example, are, even if they convert at age 5, they still have 5 years of testosterone, making their bones bigger and stronger and longer, and making their muscles stronger as well, even when they start taking estrogen and other hormones to convert to become women biologically. Any thoughts on that?
Well, Bonnie, I'd love to talk to that because, you know, I'm a runner in my personal life, and I take my distance and time very seriously. In fact, every day I log it in a book, and I'm really proud to share that recently I won a 5K among both the men and the women. So this is really personal to me, and also as somebody who is a women's advocate and has been lifelong. And I watched this. And
has a daughter, has an 8-year-old
I have a daughter, and I'm so proud of her and her athletic endeavors that she does. And so I think the real issue here is it's one of inclusion. And the fact of the matter is that as far as chemicals in the body or the hormones of estrogen and testosterone, there's actually more variability among women than there is between women and men. And so it's kind of an artificial distinction. If you look at someone like Caster Semenya, another wonderful runner who is intersex, and has a higher level of testosterone in the body, you know, being barred from participating in sports. I mean, it's just time to put away the gender checks and the sex checks. We shouldn't have to be looking inside somebody's shorts to determine whether or not they should play. We shouldn't be testing their blood. We shouldn't be compelling them, as it was in the case of Caster. The boards were telling Caster that it was critical to actually take supplemental hormones in order to compete. That's ridiculous. And so I think it's time to get with the times and not worry about these things.
Very briefly, Congresswoman Norton, your thoughts on this?
You know, transgender is relatively new for Olympics. And it's time we made clear what is fair when it comes to competition. And there is no way that people who consider themselves women but have not had their hormones altered should be able to compete with women. Case closed. And I hope it gets closed in these Olympics forever.
Are you talking about that they should also have had the surgery before they, the gender change surgery?
No, I'm talking about hormones. Hormones are what make the difference.
Okay, all right. And we're out of time on the Olympics, but we're going to Sports Illustrated.
A transgender woman will grace the Sports Illustrated swimsuit cover for the very first time, alongside the first Black female athlete and the first rapper to appear on the cover. Lena Bloom, an actress and model, said she used to keep her identity secret and was terrified people would find out she was trans until she came out in 2014. She's joined by tennis star Naomi Osaka, who has drawn praise and criticism for her decision to stop attending press conferences due to mental health issues. The third and last woman on the cover of the magazine is Megan Thee Stallion. She became famous for her controversial, sexually charged hit song, WAP, and for her political statements.
Let's go to Rina Shah. Rina, what are your thoughts about, first of all, 3 women on the cover of SI? Are they, out there trying to overdo diversity? What's going on here?
Say they're overdoing it. I think they're celebrating people who deserve to be celebrated. I mean, it's a magazine that makes their choices and has for decades about who they put right squarely on that cover. And Naomi Osaka, I think, is a fantastic choice. I mean, she's not arguably, one of the best athletes we have alive on the planet today. And so she deserves to be there. And the other 2, wonderful. I mean, SI has chosen to put people that have traditionally not been on their covers on the cover. cover. How great is that? People should be able to see faces and shapes and bodies of different types. And that's a great thing when that happens. My problem here with this entire scenario is what Naomi Osaka is facing, the backlash from people like former TV host Megyn Kelly, who needs to keep Naomi's name out of her mouth, frankly. And these people are bullying her for being on magazine covers and saying that, why are you doing all this press when you choose not to answer the press after a match? Here's the thing, Bonnie, is that you've got these world-class athletes and we see them on the court, but they don't owe any more of themselves to all of us than they want to give. And that's the part that we as a society have not been fair to people in the public eye about doing that. We just have not been fair. We expect these people to give us all of themselves, and that's frankly wrong. I think Naomi, what she's doing, standing up for her own mental health, making her choices, taking that agency that she has, and saying that this is my choice, don't shame me for it, blocking Megyn Kelly if she wants to, she should. These trolls and these bullies like Megyn Kelly and Chrissy Teigen, who go after other women and say things that are unacceptable and they'd never say to their face and say them in digital environments, are the problem with society today.
All right, but to explain some of what the other side is saying, I actually had a parent tell me a few weeks ago that middle school and high school kids kind of feel under pressure because there's so much publicity lauding, non-binary and all the rest of it. And these kids who will for a while think that they're gay or bisexual or whatever, and they later come back to straight, but that is causing pressure on some kids to be cool. What do we think about that?
I think that's one of the big negatives. I think I'm glad you raised that because that's been my concern as well. And you do hear it from parents all over. You're hearing it, from non-traditional parents as well as minority parents are very upset about what's being put out there in the schools and in the culture. And I have to tell you, I think Naomi is a great role model. Megyn Kelly aside, and should be celebrated on SI's cover. I don't know, whatever. That she is an athlete, so yes, that is more appropriate, perhaps, than even the other two. In terms of the rapper, picking one who has lyrics that are so disgusting. I mean, I just call upon the rapper community, as others have before me, to really raise the standards because women are still being dragged through the mud in most of the rap lyrics. It's not doing anything to add to the culture. In terms of a transgender model, interesting, worthy, perhaps. She certainly is beautiful. Whether or not the market's going to think this was a good idea, Sports Illustrated is about to find out.
Right, exactly. I mean, it all does get back to Erin, to selling magazines, right? Do you think they'll get more sales on this one?
Well, that's, I think print magazines have been struggling for a while. And I think, one of the things I think about is that Victoria's Secret seems to be taking a similar page out of the book that SI has recently. And so Victoria's Secret has gone away from the Angels framework and those horrific primetime shows that they had of women in lingerie. And now one of their spokespeople is Megan Rapinoe. And so they're trying to be real. But I just want to go back to something and just say really clearly to people, especially any young people who are trans who are watching this, you matter and it's okay. And I think it's really important to stand up for young people who are transgender, who have a really high suicide rates and suicidal ideation. I know a number of transgender youth. I had a transgender youth grow up across the street from me. In my daughter's generation, I see a lot more acceptance. And so I think a lot of these concerns that are coming, they will be worked out in future generations.
Congresswoman, what are your thoughts about this?
What interested me was that the cover featured 3 Blacks and 3 women. And that confluence tells me that these people want to sell magazines. They look at 2 groups that look for themselves. And women who are not featured enough, and certainly Blacks are not. And they come together on the cover of a magazine at a time when, let's face it, Black Lives Matter is in, Black is in. So I think it is a commercial move and a move that looks to where the culture is in our country.
All right. Okay. Thank you all. Great discussion. That's it for this edition. Please continue the conversation with us by following us on Twitter, on Facebook, and on our PBS website, which is pbs.org/to-the-contrary. And thanks for watching. We'll be back next week.
Funding for To the Contrary provided by the E. Rhodes and Leona B. Carpenter Foundation, the Colcom Foundation, and the Charles A. Freoff Foundation. For a transcript or to see an online version of this episode of To the Contrary, please visit our PBS website at pbs.org/to-the-contrary.
Be more. PBS.